Hi, everybody. Okay, today we are going to talk about donuts and donut boxes. Who has ever been to a donut shop? Okay, keep your hand up if you would like to share about your experience at the donut shop, and remember to be serious about this. Bryce?
I have two favorite kinds.
Okay.
That would be chocolate dip and chocolate glaze.
Okay, so you're telling me your two favorite donuts, right? Okay. Ian?
Krispy Kreme.
Okay, so what was your experience like, though?
I got to see him make them.
Oh, you got to actually watch them being made. What are some other experience you've had when you visited a donut shop? What are some things that occur? George? You get to see what other donuts people like. Bryce?
See the donut rack?
Okay, so you get to see the rack that holds all the donuts. Braylon?
All the different types and kinds of donuts.
Oh, there are lots of different types and kinds of donuts. Does anybody else want to share about their experience visiting a donut shop? Ian?
Oh, they glazed them.
Okay, there are times when the donuts are glazed. Faith?
How fast you can receive them?
Okay, so sometimes, are you talking as a customer? How fast you can get your donut? Would anybody else like to share about their experience at a donut shop? Okay. Donuts come in many different shapes and sizes. Can anyone give me an example of a shape or size of a donut? So I'm going to write shapes and sizes of donuts. Who can tell me something about the shapes and sizes of donuts? Joseph?
Well, there is a circle shape.
Okay, so can I say that they're circular? Bryce?
They have a hole in the middle.
Okay, sometimes there's a hole in the middle. What else can you tell me about the shape and size of donuts? Ina?
They're sometimes rectangular.
Sometimes they're rectangular. Ethan? Okay, would that go with rectangular? Or is that a different kind? Is it like really skinny?
Yeah. It's like a cylinder.
So what should I say? Cylindrical?
Yeah.
Cylindrical, or is it more rectangular? Okay. I will say cylindrical.
Is that even a word?
Yes, it is. Braylon?
They say the type of like thing for the holiday, like on non-holidays, like they have a heart and like.
Okay, so they have unique shapes, like heart-shaped. What else about the shapes or sizes of donuts? Chase?
Timbits,
What do you mean by that?
like spheres.
Okay, so they can be spheres, like Timbits or donut holes. George? Okay, so sometimes you can have donuts that are small. What else about the shapes or sizes of donuts? Braylon? Okay, so if they can be small, they can also be... Okay, they can also be big. Would anybody... Yes, Ian?
I think they make like a triangular donut.
I have heard that before too. So we'll add triangular. Okay, so far we've talked about the shapes and sizes of donuts. We've talked about our experiences at donut shops. And we know that as far as shapes and sizes of donuts go, they can be circular. They can be other shapes as well. We know that donuts can be big and small, so we do have quite a variety. Okay? Usually, donuts are purchased by the dozen. What do you know about the word dozen? Sophie? There's 12. So if they're purchased by the dozen, that means they're...
I don't know. I was gonna say that when like a baker's dozen, there's usually 13 of them.
Okay. But if we're just talking about, and that is true, if we're talking about just a straight up dozen, if I say, Joseph ordered a dozen donuts, that means Joseph, go ahead.
12 donuts.
He got 12 donuts. So the word dozen means there's 12 donuts. So usually donuts are purchased by the dozen, but they can also be purchased individually. What should be considered when someone is designing the box to hold a dozen donuts? So I'm going to make another separate thing here. Considerations for designing donut boxes, and specifically a dozen donuts, which means there are 12 in a box. All right, Connor, can you tell me something that you might have to consider when you're designing a donut box?
Just enough to fit the dozen.
Okay, just enough what?
Like, just enough space to fit a dozen.
Okay, so you need to make sure you can fit 12 donuts. And what do you mean by just enough space?
You know what? So watch because people can fit like more in there, and then I just feel like they can.
Yep, go ahead, Ina. That's true. You're adding to that.
They're being like, I don't know, like they're paying like a lot of money for if there's too much space and you put more donuts, I feel like they're paying more than they should.
Oh, okay. So we just need to make sure we don't have too much space left over is what Connor's saying. And then you don't want the customer to think you're paying more than you should be paying. Faith?
Make sure that the box is the right size.
What do you mean by right size?
Like, if you're ordering a dozen donuts, make sure you have a box that's wide enough and long enough to make sure you can fit each donut in equally.
Okay, so you need to be aware of the box's, you said length and width, the box's dimensions. And I'm going to put length and width that you have to be aware of. Marissa?
You have to, like, because people like certain different donuts, so, like, the shapes would be different for every person.
Okay, so in order to consider how to design a proper donut box, you need to be aware of the shapes of the donuts that are going in there. So you have to consider the shape of the donuts. What else would you have to consider when you're designing a donut box? Taylor?
The size of the donut.
Okay, so shape of the donuts, and I'm going to put / size of the donuts. Braylon?
Maybe like the shape of the box.
What do you mean the shape of the box?
Like a diamond shape maybe.
Why do you think that would matter? Joseph?
Because if you have like a circular box and you want to fit rectangular donuts in there, it's not going to work out too well.
Okay. Bryce? Okay. Is there anything else about the shape of the box being considered when you're talking about designing the donut boxes? So we've talked about the box's dimensions are important. How many donuts fit into that box, which we already talked about, a dozen donuts. The shape of the donuts, the size of the donuts, and we need to know the shape of the box. Joseph?
Well, if you are a donut shop that's selling like several shapes and sizes of donuts, then you should probably find out a box that would fit all of the donuts and cover all of the donuts.
Okay, so would that go with the shape of the box is pretty important still? What about the cost of a box? Would that be important to consider? Why? Bryce?
Because you want to make a profit.
Oh, okay, so keep going. Cost of the box, and I'll say profit, but can somebody tell me more about that? Quinn?
You just sell it for as much as you buy it for. Then really that's just enough to buy another box. You're really not getting any money for yourself. You have to like charge a little bit more for the box when you're selling it than when you're buying it. And that's usually it's nothing to sell.
Okay, so your goal is to try to make money off of selling your donuts, but you said something about the cost of the box, that if you only sell your donuts in your box for the price of the box, then you still have to, okay. Chase,
Retail price.
what do you know about retail price?
Like, you need to make, you might gotta make the price higher so you get more money.
The price of what higher?
Of what you are selling.
Okay.
If you're selling a dozen of donuts and it costs $10, you wanna add a couple of dollars, like just say like $4, so it's $14 for a dozen box of a dozen donuts, and then you make you have enough money to get another box, and then you have extra money to spend.
Okay, so your goal is to make a profit, and you have to make a decision, and this is going to come up in a question I have to ask you later about setting prices. So we're going to talk about that in a second. Is there anything else we can talk about why the cost of the box is important? Because we've talked about the shape and the size of the box are important. The shape and size of the donuts can be important too. But what about the cost of the box? Joseph?
The cost of the box is also important because you have to take into account what people will buy for like the box of donuts. Because if you're just like selling it for $100, people aren't pretty much going to buy it. You have to make sure that they put a reasonable markup price on it, so you still make money, but people still buy your product.
Okay. I think that's good. What are some different types of boxes that could hold donuts? Connor? Joseph?
Cardboard boxes?
Cardboard boxes? What's cardboard? And why? Well, it sounds simple, but we have to make sure we're all on the same page with what it is and why would you use it for donut boxes versus something else. Sophie?
Because it's like durable.
Because it's what?
It's durable, so it won't like break in half.
Okay, it's durable, it won't break in half. Connor?
It's cheap.
It's cheap, what do you mean by that?
It's like the least expensive thing you can get the whole donut.
Okay, and why would that be important when you're considering designing donut boxes?
So you can make more money.
So you can make more money by buying an inexpensive container to get rid of your donuts in. Kirsten?
Well, it's recyclable, so if you kind of mention that to customers, it would probably make them more susceptible to the idea of giving.
That's possible too, yeah. Joseph?
Well, if you're selling your donuts in like wood or something, it's not as flexible as cardboard, so you can't really store it away in compact space.
Okay.
People might think it's dirty, like the wood.
Like of the cardboard?
No, the wood, like if you
Oh, if we're sticking with that? Yeah. Braylon?
like when you go to put it on something and then would break that.
Okay, so far we've talked about the cost of the box is definitely something to consider with designing donut boxes. We talked about types of boxes being cardboard, and your goal is still to make a profit. We've mentioned the retail price and marking up because our goal is to make as much money on our donuts as possible. One last thing, yes.
I was gonna say, another thing I do for yourself for holding donuts is a box.
A plastic box. What are you used to seeing in a donut shop? Is that, would you guys agree on that? Okay. Okay. Does anyone know how the owner of a donut shop decides the price to charge customers for a dozen donuts? So this is a decisions on price of a dozen donuts. So what are some things the owner has to consider when they're trying to price a dozen donuts? Marissa?
Price of the ingredients.
Okay, so the amount of money you're paying for the ingredients. What else? Joseph?
If you're like not making them homemade, you're making them manufactured, like you have to consider the amount of money you take for electricity.
Oh, okay, so it's not just the amount of the ingredients for the donuts, but you also need like electricity. If it's being manufactured and they're not just homemade in your kitchen one time. Faith?
How much one donut equals?
Oh, how much one donut costs. Why would that be important, knowing the price of one donut? What do you think, Marissa? Okay, because we're talking specifically a dozen donuts, so if you find the price of one donut, you can just multiply that price by 12. I'll just write by. Okay, what are some other things that go into an owner's decision when they're selling a dozen donuts? Sophie? Why?
So then they don't get,
What do you mean different price of a donut?
maybe they make it cheaper because then if people would buy them separately, then they would buy them separately than buying the whole thing.
Okay, so you do have to think about pricing for, well, that kind of goes with this. The price for an individual donut, because that could help determine what's going on with more donuts.
Maybe like if you were to buy the 12, then maybe it would be like if you would make it cheaper, then it'd be if you were to buy each separately, like if you would buy 8, like it'd be like a difference like that. So then you'd be selling more products.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. So trying to give the customer the opportunity to have the better buy. A little bit of that. What else, Connor?
And they make more money because the
Stop spinning your chairs, guys, because they're getting to be loud.
more they spend, the more money that you get. It may be less, but it may be less for them, but you get more money because you still sell more donuts.
Okay, so our goal is still to make a profit. So we do have to take into account how much some of these other things do cost. So far we've talked about the price of the ingredients of donuts. What are some other costs that you might have to take into account when you're trying to make a decision? Joseph?
Well, if you have coworkers, you might need to think about that, or you might need to think about the boxes.
Oh, okay. Why would the boxes make a difference?
Because, do I go?
Yes.
Okay. Because if you take in account of the donuts and the boxes, they all cost together as one sum. But you have to still make a profit for the boxes and the donuts.
Gotcha. Donut boxes. So what are some things that you would need for a donut box to take into account? Ian?
Like the graphs on the cardboard box.
Okay, so the design on the box. Ina? The material you're using, which we said was usually cardboard. So the material is cardboard. Okay, and we also talked about how donut boxes come in different shapes and sizes too. Braylon? Yeah.
Donut price on?
Yes. How much one donut costs?
Yeah, after you multiply that as well, Cody, you want to make sure that's a reasonable price, and if it's not,
Okay. So we need to make sure it's a reasonable price so that customers will buy it. Quinn?
Kind of going along with electricity a little bit. If they're not homemade, then you might have to pay for maintenance of machines that make them, or delivery. If someone delivers the donuts to you, you might have to pay the delivery for that.
Okay, so there are other delivery. There are other pieces involved in the production of making donuts because we're assuming that these. If you're making a dozen donuts and you own a donut shop, you probably do use some of those things. Joseph?
For donut boxes, you have to know, like, if you know the price of, like, 1 square inch of cardboard, you have to know the surface area of the cardboard box.
Oh, okay. So we need to know the surface area. And then you said per what?
Per square inch.
Per square inch, or for inches squared. And how does that help? Why does that go into your decision for how much you're pricing?
Because then you know how much the box is priced.
So you might have to actually find out how much it costs for different size boxes based on finding the surface area per square inch. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this? Braylon?
You want to find out what people will pay for, how much people will pay for.
Okay, so you might need to ask people what are they going to pay for, what are they willing to pay for the donuts? Is there anything else you'd like to add to this? Yes. So, okay, so like a donut hole would cost less than a bigger donut. Okay, those are definitely all very good considerations that go into making decisions about the price of a dozen donuts. Okay, so we do have to take into account what materials go into what you're giving customers. Whether it's donut ingredients or what we know about boxes, because that's what you're giving to a customer. Okay, so your goal, like Chase said earlier, is to make sure you make a profit. It might be helpful to find out how much one donut might cost sometimes, and then we know that we're talking about boxing up a dozen donuts. Okay, are there any questions on anything we've done so far? Okay, I have one last question for you. What cost, and this might sound very similar to what we just asked, but what cost does an owner have to consider when setting donut prices? That is a little different from the question I just asked. If there's something up here that you need to repeat because it also applies to this question, I can star it as well. So what costs does an owner have to consider when setting donut prices? We've already said some of these things. Marissa? Yep, the amount of the ingredients of the donut. How much one donut might cost. But technically we're trying to find out how much to set the price for. Chase?
Supply and demand.
Okay, based on, what people are willing to buy and what the demand is for it and the supply that you have of these things. George? The profit. How much do you want to profit? That's something you need to determine. Marissa? Okay, so these extra things here, how much do those materials cost that go into giving people a box a dozen donuts? Mason? The boxes. So not only do you need the materials for the donuts, you need the materials for the donut boxes because that costs you money. Anything else? Alrighty. Okay, so I think we have everything. One last thing I want to make sure that we went over. We did discuss a little bit about the packaging costs, right? Joseph helped us out a little bit with this. Ian helped us out with this, that sometimes there's a design that goes on the box. But we talked about boxes are usually cardboard, and Joseph came up with the idea that we might need to find the surface area of a box to determine the price of how much the box will cost. Okay, are there any other things that you would like to add about the cost of packaging and what you know about the cost of packaging a dozen donuts? Braylon? It's possible. Yep, you might have to consider that taxes involved. What about the cost of the packaging? Anything else with the cost of the packaging? Joseph?
Well, some donut shops or donut boxes that have like a little layer in between, like you get 6 donuts on the bottom and 6 donuts on top, and they have like a little wax paper.
Yep.
So you might need to take into account of like wax paper or something.
Okay, so that could go with the packaging too, parchment paper maybe, or wax paper. All right, Braylon?
Maybe for like a festival that you know, gift wrapping and stuff.
Gift wrapping, so sometimes there's other things that go along with it than just a box being cardboard. That's true. All right. Any other things that you would like to add to any of our lists? So just to review, we've talked about the shapes and sizes of donuts. All right, they're mostly circular, but they can be other shapes, and they come in a variety of sizes. We talked about some things that are important to consider when designing donut boxes. You have to be aware that you're trying to fit 12 donuts in there if your goal is to fit in a dozen. You have to be aware of the box's dimensions, how long and wide they are, the shape of the donuts and the size, the shape of the box, the cost of the box, which we said was cardboard, and your goal is to profit, which is to make money. And some people mentioned retail price and markup is something to consider when you're designing donut boxes. Then here are some decisions on the price of pricing a dozen donuts, because we have to take into consideration the price before you turn around and sell it. So we had to pay attention to how much the ingredients cost, how much it costs for the materials and the supplies, for other people, labor, how much one donut costs. We talked about better buy, making a profit again. We talked about the donut boxes and the materials we need for that, and how we could possibly find how much a donut box would cost. And we talked about tax and possibly using other materials that go into our packaging. Okay, is there anything else you guys would like to add or have questions on? Okay. Are you ready? Not are you ready? You are ready to complete the donuts performance task.